a little bit later than I planned. I destroyed Mel's system. It was a master plan. It was a Machiavellian plot. Or I'm sorry, Mel. You were part of my evil scheme. I hope you can forgive me.
Well, that's why you get to write all the creative stuff, is because you keep coming up with Machiavellian schemes.
That's right. Hey, listen. If you want a good literature concept, always go with Machiavelli. He's a great one to always go with because he's got a really interesting way of looking at things.
He does.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. So this is supposed to happen twice.
Yes.
Yes, folks. I just do this behind the curtain. The first one, I'm still sorry. Second one, I had a weird week. I just had a really weird week. So
it happens.
Yes. So thank you for being so forgiving. So this is Mel Todd. So to the audience, who are you and why are you awesome?
My name's Mel Todd. I have about 30 novels out. I write mostly urban fantasy, science fiction. I've been writing now for, God, what year is it? 9 years. Yeesh. And I will be making the leap this coming January in like 50 days to becoming a full-time author.
Know the feeling. I've been trying to be a full-time freelancer for about the last 2 years. I 2 months ago, I was this close to living wage, like this close, right? It's a struggle. Like I think though, a worthwhile one, because I don't know about you, I got really tired of working for people.
Oh yeah, especially since my commute home today was over 2 hours.
Whereabouts are you?
I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh wow. That's
And
like
everybody knows that in Atlanta's an hour from Atlanta. The
yes.
traffic is pretty bad.
That bad, huh? That's like LA bad.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I've driven in LA. LA isn't as bad.
That's impressive.
My brother, who lived in LA before he lived up here, pointed out to me that LA County, the county of LA, has more people in it than the state of Georgia does.
Yes, okay? It does.
LA County has less accidents per day than Atlanta does.
Yep. I'm not surprised.
That's kind of a sad statement that they literally have the same population as the entire state, but our little city has more accidents per day than they do.
See, there are factors to see. I speak as I live in Canada right now, but I've lived in Phoenix. I lived in Detroit. I've traveled through places like LA, Chicago. Mm-hmm. I have not been to Atlanta, so I can't comment on Atlanta too much because I don't know. But there's a mentality to driving in different cities. Like, for example, in Phoenix, like my personal experience, nobody looks left. It's true. I'd be one of those really crazy people that could walk in that weather. There's tricks to do that, mm-hmm. and I know how to do that. One time, I shit you not, I got to watch two cars go like this. Like there's a turn intersection. They turned left right into each other. Mm-hmm. I literally watched it happen right in front of me. And the reason why it happened had nothing to do with traffic issues in terms of the lights and the rules. It's because neither driver had the idea somehow to enter their heads to look left. If either one of them had done it, right, the accident would not have happened. But they don't. Right.
It just amazes me sometimes how absolutely oblivious we can be as drivers.
There's a lot more. I say this like with respect. There's a lot more distractions today than there were in the past. Because let's like most cars, like this is a back in my day thing. It's an old man yelling at clouds here. So just take this for what it's worth. But I remember when I was a kid and driving, Mom and Dad didn't have a cell phone, or they had a music like a little tape player. This is how old things are, folks. This is pre-CDs. They had tape player. Now you got a CD player. You got like AI, like, hey, can you take me somewhere? And it plots out your map and your route. Then you got your cell phone being obnoxious on top of that, and then you got to hear every other motherfucker doing the same thing you're doing on the road. Hey, Alexia, can you give me the best route to such and such a place? Right? You're dealing with all this. This is on top of dealing with traffic. Like it's.
And I'll give you that. However, I will say that I've noticed that my friends who have young children, there's a wonderful thing to say, here's your iPad as you start the car ride. Because I'm pretty sure the number of times my mother looked behind at me and my brother going, if you two don't stop it right now, I'm going to pull the car over, or I'm going to strangle both of you because you didn't have as much to entertain us in the back seats. And we were really good at the whole, she's touching me, she's touching me. I'm not touching him. I'm not touching. Yeah,
Yeah, no. See, again, there are trade-offs, right?
there are
There are
trade-offs.
trade-offs. There are definitely trade-offs. I'm not going to dispute this. However, I think here's the thing, right? And this is just what I've noticed about American culture, right? You make it impossible to ignore certain shit that maybe you should be able to ignore it easier. Here's another thing I really hate about modern cars: the seatbelt thing. You don't have your seatbelt on, and it just gets more annoying. I hate that shit. I would thought like if it's in my car, I try to find the thing that does it, and I try to shut it up because it doesn't. right? Because it doesn't help me with my driving. It doesn't do anything constructive, right?
Except
it's not
annoy
constructive, right? And I'll get to the seatbelt eventually. I promise, probably. Anyways, right? Right? And the thing is, I'm also one of those really like cantankerous fucks. If you try to make me do something, I'm less likely to do it, even if it's for my own good, because now you're trying to make me do it, right? And you didn't ask me, you just went. Normally, that's the thing, right? It's not that they went and they asked me about it, talked to me about it. They go straight, no, you got to do this. I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the more they tell you to do it, the less you want to do it.
Well, that's it, right? Whereas if they go to me, listen, could you do it? That's a much different approach, right? Now you're asking me and you're being kind about it. And even if I disagree with it at that point, I am more inclined to hear you out, which is a much better way of dealing with people. But if you go,
usually,
right? Usually. So I get cantankerous. So you on top of that, so I'm being cantankerous already because of the stupid seatbelt thing. Then on top of that, I got this artificial intelligence trying to direct me. I don't need directions. I'm old and cranky. I still talk to clouds. I don't fucking need you to tell me where to go. I remember maps, damn it. And then on top of that, but then you also got like climate control, auto. Like I think by its very nature, we work so hard to pull everybody's attention into so many different ways. Right now, when a kid did, don't get me wrong. When a kid did that, yes, you were focused on your kid. But see, there's a little bit of again that cantankerousness, right? Kids trying to get you to get their attention. You could be like, no, I can be a bastard about this, and I will be because you're being a bastard trying to do this to me here of all fucking places, right? Not. I would rather you do this at a candy store. At a candy store, I can at least give you attention. On the road, I'm trying not to deal with the maniacs around me because I too am a maniac and I know what I'm capable of doing. And all of this to say, with kids, in some ways, it's easier because you do two things. If you don't stop, yes, we're going home. No, we won't do this. It's like, shut up, right? Right. That's it. And this is parrot. And I've been that kid. I've seen the parenting 101. Do you want to go home? No. Then shut up. But I don't care. You can tell me when we get out of the car. Until then, I don't give a shit. Right? Yes. I may not swear, but it's like, I don't care. So don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. But if you make me worry about it, we're going home. And then, right? That's it. Right? You may have to follow through with that once or twice, but so, you know what? You deal with it, right? Whereas all these buttons and doodads and in your cell phones and all this other shit that goes on, right? I think today it's actually harder to drive today. Like call me old-fashioned, but I'd rather want one of these old, crappy little cars with none of that extra fancy stuff. Just a wheel and maybe something for music.
I am old. I am spoiled. I like my heated seats.
Okay. I'll give you heated seats. But but you guys can see this point. Most of the rest of that nonsense you could probably do without.
Most of it, though, I will say that given how expansive some cities are. Sometimes having the GPS, because yes, I know how to get from point A to point B, but when this road's shut down and this road has an accident, I don't have a clue.
No, and that's fair. I'm not saying some of this stuff's not useful, but
No, but
no,
you're right.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I used to drive a old Toyota 4x4, and my air conditioning was 2x4 or 2x60, which means
Mhm.
you had both windows rolled down and we're going 60 miles an hour because that was the
Yes,
only air conditioning I had.
yeah, and, and
So
and
no,
probably
I get it.
yeah, there's probably less accidents. I'm not. Again, there are some. Again, everything's a trade off. I'm not saying
Mhm.
I'm not going to be one of the quite those cantankerous motherfuckers that goes, "Oh my god, back in my day it was better." No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying though is everything has a trade off, right? Everything has a trade off. So I think the reason I can't speak for LA drivers other than the fact that I think it comes with just a shit ton of practice. Like, oh my gosh, we're always a parking lot. Doesn't matter
Yeah,
what time of day it is, we're a parking lot. I feel like Atlanta has evolved into the parking lot syndrome,
I
right?
have.
Yeah. So it's evolved. It hasn't quite like it doesn't have the years upon years upon years of LA where no one in the right mind wants to drive in LA. No one. Right? So now Atlanta's going to become much like LA. No one in their right mind wants to
Nine
drive.
wants to drive.
Yeah, right. No one in the right mind. It's like why? Because it's you can't win. There's nowhere to go. I don't know if you remember this movie Office Space. There's this one scene where he's in traffic and there's this old guy with a walker. He drives by. He's in traffic for so long, the old guy with the walker passes
What
him.
passes them?
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
no.
It-
I've had that happen.
yeah,
Not
and
with a walker, but with somebody walking. Like,
the walker's the smartest person here. It's like, God damn it, he wins, right? So, it's the way it goes. I didn't think we'd open up with talking about traffic, and yeah, it's the way it goes. It's the way it goes. No, so I say all that to say that I think, like, I don't want a complicated car anymore. I want something. Listen, if I'm going to have complications, there's only two things I want. I do like the heated seats things. Yeah, I'll give you
especially in
that.
cold mornings, that's really nice.
I live in Calgary, Alberta. It's minus 20 outside right now.
Yes.
Trust me, I understand that, right? But here's what I still want. I still want a Jetsons car. I'm sorry. I
Oh, well,
want
that
a
would
Jet.
be nice. Yeah.
Yes, I want a Jetsons car. I want to be able to fly to work. Fly to work. That would be freaking
That'd be
awesome.
nice. Except then there would be traffic in the sky, just like there was for George.
Yeah, but that's fine. Here's the thing: traffic's three-dimensional. I can cheat.
I seem to remember an awful lot of episodes where people did that and got tickets as they were flying out of the
Hey,
skylines.
listen. Listen. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth it. See, I don't know if tickets in the sky would work. Here's why I can't believe we're doing this conversation about flying cars. What the hell? Here's why. Because it's too fun, right? There's no highways in the sky, so there's no real structure. You can kind of create like a little pathway. You could try that, but rationally, how the hell would you do that, right?
Actually, I don't think it's that hard. I mean, we technically have shipping lines, and
Yes.
for the most part, even submarines and stuff, which are three-dimensional, they can move up, down, and sideways. They know and they stay within certain lanes. So you basically are just going to set it up the same way we do roads because you have to have the open area for other things, like billboards, according
But
to George Jetson.
yeah, but at the same time, I think there's a little difference. Here's the thing about the submarine too. The reason some of the structure is the way it is because if a submarine goes too far down, shit
Yeah,
happens.
crushes. Yeah.
Right, yeah, yes, shit happens. Now, there's a point where oxygen doesn't hit the brain, but let's be honest, you and I both know. You and I both know. You've seen people on the road. Oxygen in the brain, you wonder if it actually connects at all sometimes, right? Right. And this one, by the way, this is one of the reasons I do believe in a God. This is why it does come down to stupid people. And here's what, and I say it like that because it's like this. You don't know how they're still standing. You don't you don't understand it. It makes no sense to you. The only conclusion I could come to is that something somewhere is watching them, and right, and I have come to that conclusion. And it's like there is a God, and
There's a great trope in a lot of the women's fiction and romances, and it's TSTL. It's not a trope, it's an insult, where the female, it's almost always the female main character, is TSTL, too stupid to live. And it tends to be one of the main complaints that you'll get with a lot of the lead romance characters is there's no way somebody could be that stupid and live. They just
and
can't.
and then I go, have you walked down the street
Ha-
sometime?
ha- have you watched the people of Walmart ever? Oh,
Oh,
go look at that. You will change your mind instantly. She will look like a brain surgeon.
I've seen smart people. Okay, so what? Okay, so this is a Calgary, exclusively Calgary. I did not believe a zombie apocalypse was possible until I saw this moment. I mean, and honestly, it was from corporate Calgary. This is what happened. So we have a train system that goes into the city, into downtown, and it's better to take the train downtown than it is to drive downtown for reasons, right? Not quite yours, but still bad, right? So it's better to take the train. It's faster and all that stuff. So one morning, I was going to a job, and the train was out. So we had arranged a ride. So the transit company were sending out bus service. I literally saw a bunch of corporate people almost overturn the bus and the driver in there. Right, they surrounded the bus, and they grabbed onto it. And I actually saw the bus shake, like lift for just a second. And I was like, wow, right? These people were so desperate to get to work.
I'd go home and take a snow day.
Yeah, yeah, we can't. We don't have that excuse here, ma'am. We just don't because like here's the
No, no,
reality.
no. I have that excuse. There's too much snow. I'm not going to work. I will work from home.
It doesn't work here though because we have minus 40 days up here. So
Well,
minus
yeah, but there's a difference between minus 40 and 18 feet of snow.
no, not up here. Up here, no, because up here because it's normal. Like that's the thing. Like it is normal here. So, and
Atlanta gets a dusting and shuts down.
I know. I
Literally, everybody. And I'm like, okay, you guys are idiots. I don't care.
hey, listen. Are you paying me for? But that's the thing, right? Different environments, different rules.
Mm-hmm.
Here, minus 40 is not uncommon in the wintertime. Yeah, right.
That's a little cold for me.
It's not the cold. No, the coldest city in Canada in the winter is Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Really.
It can go to minus 60.
There, a couple years ago, a polar vortex hit Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to the news as I go to work, and I walk in and I look at my boss. I said, just so you know, if it ever gets cold enough outside that my cornea are freezing over and icicles are forming in my tear ducts, I'm not coming to work. And she just looked at me. I'm like, seriously, somebody's they're telling you not to go outside because your corneas will freeze over. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this isn't happening. I will be staying at home.
Yeah, no, like no, like don't get me wrong. No one wants to go out in that weather. I'm not saying people
Mhm.
go out in that weather willingly, but it's not unheard of because, yeah,
No thanks.
yeah. So I mean, Winnipeg can get colder than Calgary. Now that's the only city. It's one of the only cities that can do that. So and also they're worse. We have mountains here. So that
And they're off the lake.
yeah. So they're beautiful, and they're an hour away, and they can change our weather. Winnipeg is flat. It's absolutely flat. It's literally like they literally like minus 60 some days of the year it can get that low and when you're like how but that's the world we live in, right? So when you
I don't mind the how. It's why are we living there? That this implies a lack of intelligence with the human species.
oh we can
Negative 60. No. Mm-mm.
well see our biggest strength as a species is there's not a single climate we can't adapt to.
No, and I know this.
Yeah,
Can does not mean should.
that's the downfall. That's the downfall of the human species. See, it's not that it's more the fact that see we can adapt to anything, and that's the good thing. That's a great thing. But it's also our worst quality too, because we can adapt to anything. If we are told it's a good idea and we believe it, we'll take it. We'll take it. And that's our, again, from a survival standpoint, it's a wonderful gift. From a common sense standpoint, that's horrifying. Right? So it's like,
This is so true.
yeah, it's truth, right? I mean, like we're not. I don't mean we have to go deep into the hearts of the pandemic, but I think the biggest two lessons I've learned about people in the pandemic are the following: don't care which side of the fence you're on. If you believe an idea hard enough and strong enough, you won't listen to anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that time taught me that lesson. So it taught me a very valuable thing: do not fall in love with any outcome, because if you don't fall in love with an outcome, you can't be bullshitted any way you want it to. It's harder to bullshit you, and it's also, you're easier to pivot. You're not going to be so caught up in your idea of how the world works that when new information presents itself, you can't deal with it. But number two, people will take anything if they think it's a good idea. That's also a horrifying thought too. So I learned these two, like these are two very important things I've kept into my head. Right. And I've realized, and you're laughing a little bit at just the way I'm putting it.
No, I'm just thinking this is the reason why we have so many cults in America and why they are so successful.
But I mean, if you're talking about cults, but you got to look at also the fact that cult methodology is used in your advertising. It's used in
sure.
networks. It's everywhere.
It's used in church. It's used in government. It's used in everything because it is an effective psychological way of controlling people. Most people just don't realize it, or sometimes they do and don't care because it's easier to go along than it is to buck the system.
It depends on where they're at when they realize it. That's what it comes down to. The earlier you realize it, the more trouble you are later, because again, that's what happens.
Oh yeah.
Right. I speak from no experience from this whatsoever. But
this is also why we read. This is why science fiction fantasy is actually so important, because it introduces the ideas that your status quo might not be the only status quo.
Definitely old school science fiction. I'm a big so my favorites like growing up were Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, like Heinlein, old school Heinlein. New school Heinlein, I read New school Heinlein first, and that was a bit of an eye-opening thing. Let me tell you, at 15 years old to read like Time Enough for Love. Wow. Porn is tame, folks, compared to some of the things Heinlein wrote about and at the end of his life. But it's one of those things like old. But if you look at the older science fiction in general, it wasn't so much about the technological stuff. It was there.
Oh no, it was always social. It's always
social, moral, and ethical.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you look at I would argue Star Trek: The Next Generation is the most successful science fiction show of all time.
As doing what science fiction was meant to do, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's more. I think considering the way it tends, but it's a morality show.
Sure, but I mean, the original one was too. The thing is can you write the stories in a way that they don't come across as lectures? They come across as stories.
Yes. Oh well, that's the thing. And there's some really like I rate The Next Generation above the original Trek in this regard. I think the original Trek was good. It definitely planted the frontier, but I think The Next Generation's voice was more. They looked at things from a much more mature angle than even the old. The original Star Trek series is a love letter to pulp, like the old school pulp, and it's great at it. I take nothing away from it. It's a wonderful show for that. But exploring concepts, reasons, and the possibilities of existence, that was The Next Generation. And that
was.
Yeah, that was The Next Generation. And they did that so well. Like okay, DS9 is my favorite of all the Star Trek shows, right? It's a really, really good one. because it takes it to another. That one especially shows you there are other ways of doing things. Like that one is really good at that. But the next generation was the purest in terms of you have a possibility here, and we have rules we follow. How do these rules impact our like? It forces the idea of using our structures to initiate good outcomes, the best possible outcomes we possibly can.
But also our structures sometimes causing the worst outcome.
Exactly.
They've done that more than once too.
Oh, absolutely. And that show did that such a fundamentally balanced way.
Mm-hmm.
That
No, it did. It showed in many ways how good our human attitudes and expectations can be, and then sometimes how harmful they can be.
yeah.
Because they did do harm also. I mean, if I had any writer that I wish I had the courage to write like, it would probably be Harlan Ellison. Because the stories he told usually had so many layers to them that you didn't get it until ages afterwards.
See, my favorites of the writers from that era, I'd have to go with Delaney. Samuel Delaney did that.
Mm-hmm.
Delaney did it from that era. I like Ellison's depth. Philip K. Dick definitely played with some layers and some fun ways too. But I think, okay, from a Star Trek standpoint, my favorite writer was DC Fontana. She wrote some of the best.
She was kind of awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, no, she wrote some of the best episodes of several Star Treks.
Vonda McIntyre.
Very good. Very good.
Vonda was excellent. Yeah. I actually have a whole bunch of the old James Blish series, Star Trek 9, which were all of the basically short stories for the Star Trek universe that was in the original fan magazines. I actually have a bunch of the James Blish edited ones. And then I've got the Trouble for Tribbles backstory by David Gerald. Because Trouble for Tribbles was awesome. And actually, I've liked most of his stuff. Chess with the Dragon is excellent. How to Cook Man or How to Serve Man is a hilarious story. I can't remember if he wrote that or if somebody else did. I know that they did a movie off of it, How to Serve Man.
From that era too, Fred Saberhagen's very underrated. Mm-hmm. Some really cool stuff. Roger Zelazny is my personal favorite. I just love that. He did so much in 200 words. Not 200 words. No, he did so much in 200 pages, I should say.
Yeah.
All right.
Because he was writing the 50,000 word novels because that's what was popular back then.
Yeah, and he put so much into them. It's just like you read them afterwards, you're like, wow. And you read some again. Back in my day, nowadays, you read a fantasy novel today and you read his stuff. His stuff still holds up, even compared to some of the big tomes. Like, no, he can go toe to toe with you. That's impressive, considering that's only 50,000 words. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I was going to say, I actually have Lord of Light on my bookshelf as one of my to-be-read books because somebody really recommended it by Zelazny.
It's a fantastic book. I would. It's his best solitary book. If my personal opinion, it's just mine. The first 5 books of the Amber Cycle are his best. So that's my opinion. You can go. It ties in parallel universes like King Arthur, a little bit of Shakespeare, in some really fun ways. But I mean, that era was about social commentary, and then in the 80s it created hard science, which by and large is my least favorite form of science fiction out there to read.
Oh, I don't know. Have you read Mission of Gravity by Hal Clemens?
I have not read him yet.
That one, the story alone, and the fact that he gave all of the proofs for all the formulas to justify everything he did in the story at the back of the book. If you want to get a young kid hooked on science and they're old enough to understand that book, that is the book to give it to them, because it basically is probably an early way of The Martian, where he has the science to back up everything he does. Hal Clements gave you all of the proofs and everything that explained how you could have a torso planet, how the gravity would work, how their suits would work. It was absolutely fascinating.
That's world building as well, right? Which is cool, right? I don't mind world building, like world building like that. What I found with a lot of the hard science fiction we got into the 80s and 90s was sometimes the Asimov was, okay, I'll give you the example. Asimov would come up with a scientific concept he was explaining, but he would explain it within a couple of pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the one that was David Brin wrote a story about a black hole inside the Earth's core. That's an awesome concept, right? It's an awesome
Mm-hmm.
concept. I got lost. Because he would sometimes have to take somewhere in the middle of the story about 10, 12 pages to explain the concept. Or what it did was he went so far out of I get why it was there. But he
It
went
threw you out of the story.
it completely. And
Yeah.
I think and that's the thing that I find, like, there are some good hard science fiction authors out there. Peter Hamilton does a really fun job with some of the stuff he does,
Well,
right?
I think to a certain extent, if you're going to write a true hard sci-fi story, and you need to take all of the science explanation out and put that at the end of the book, that basically is like appendix. For those of you who want the actual explanation of how this stuff works, here it
Yep.
is. For everybody else, here's the story. Because the people who have the education, intelligence, background, whatever, are going to love that last section. For the rest of us, it throws us out of the story because we're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What does this have to do with whether or not Joe escapes the black hole?
Well,
So you have
that,
to.
but also Asimov did it better than they did. I was spoiled
Oh,
because
sure.
right. He would break that down within 2 pages. A real master of communication can explain a concept to you without, again, to anyone, not to right. And Asimov, that was his gift. That was his true gift. So when you got to listen to, when you read him, and then you would read somebody out there, because Asimov would talk about some incredibly complex stuff in his novels too. But I never felt like when he was explaining something to me, it was taking me out of the story as much. Or if it did, it was very brief, and he went right back
Right.
into the story. He was great at that. So you can do it, but if you're going to do it in the story, it has to be brief, right? If you can't,
Yep.
if you can't make it brief, make an appendix, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's why Orwell's 1984 appendix is such an interesting read. It's the world building of his story, but he
Yeah.
didn't put it in the main story. He put it in the appendix, which is the true ending of the story, which is really, really fascinating. So I agree with you. So what do you think? Like, why do you think fantasy has become so popular now?
So the sarcastic answer is because the world sucks and we'd like to be someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
The honest answer is that right now we can get away with doing things with magic that we can't. The risk with doing it with science is you have to back it up and explain it a little bit more, and we can't always do that. And it creates, I think, a false sense of hope in a lot of us. Whereas with magic, well, we all know magic doesn't actually exist. You can hope and dream for it, but nobody's really waiting for the, a magic wand that can open locks. There's an awful lot of us, me included, who are still really waiting for the engine that they talked about in popular science 30 years ago that could get 100 miles to the gallon.
Oh, do you want some really depressing news on
Oh,
that?
no, I'm well aware of the depressing news. Trust me, I've been aware of it for a long time. It frustrates the daylights out of me.
Oh,
But
you mean the fact that that same article was printed 30 years prior to that too?
it couldn't have been because this was off of experiments that
No,
they
no.
were running at one of the colleges.
The idea of that efficiency. This is an automobile industry thing. I know this, right? They've always played with that idea. Again, they've done it differently throughout the years, but that concept has existed.
Oh, sure, the concepts existed, but they actually had the plans. They had a working prototype, and the oil company bought up the patent and locked it down.
Yep, one of many things they've done. And it's happened
Yep.
many times.
So,
Many
again,
times.
hoping and wanting something that you actually know is possible. I mean, think about what it would do to an average family if you could get 100 miles to a gallon of gas. It could literally change you from having barely making ends meet to actually living. That sort of hope and knowing you're not going to get it is actually a lot more devastating than the idea that you get to pet a unicorn, because outside that brief bit of time when you're a little kid, you never actually believe that you're going to see a unicorn because it isn't possible. The 100 miles per gallon of gas is possible.
Oh, sure.
We are just blocked from doing it. And I think that honestly is why fantasy tends to be more fun, is you don't necessarily have to worry as much about ruining dreams or promising things that we're not going to get, but we could. I don't know. That's just kind of my opinion of it because fantasy gives you a lot more fun. There's a lot more life. And I mean, one of my favorite authors is David Weber, who I know. He writes technically the science fiction, space opera stuff, and I love his stuff. But it is probably grittier and more true to the human genotype and that we're all assholes than what a lot of fantasy is. Fantasy tends to usually have a villain. They are maleficent. They are a bad guy, and the hero's going to win. When you write science fiction, you don't have that as much. I mean, you can get away with it occasionally, but like Louis McMaster Bujold, she has the entire series. There's almost never a villain. There are antagonists who may be trying to stop the hero from doing things, but it's never as black and white as what you can do with fantasy. Fantasy is a lot easier to do a black and no, don't get me wrong. Robert Jordan, Brandon Sanderson, all of those guys can do all of those shades of gray, but sometimes it's really nice to fall back into the Disney trap of having it be black and white. You know who to root for, you know who to boo. Because life is almost never that easy, and it's kind of nice sometimes to have that option to have it easy, especially when you're trying to forget that life isn't always that easy.
Oh, life isn't easy, but it's I had so again the real world me. I have an idea of how the world works. I have an idea. I don't pretend that it's entirely accurate because that's just listen. It's one guy that's been alive for 41 years. That's it. I've seen my shit. I've seen the ups and the downs. What again? Politically speaking, I'm an atheist. Or actually, what I should say is I'm a moderate. That doesn't exist in today's political spectrum. So there, might as well just be an atheist. So, you know, I have certain beliefs of how I think the world could be and should be, and this is what I love about science fiction is you can create science fiction at its best is what if this happens, right?
Yeah.
And I love that, and I do think there's a real magic in that because it does. I think we need hope, and especially in a world like today when you look at it and you're looking around and you're looking at not to be too depressing, some corporation trying to get greedy and exploit people for something, or a government just letting it happen for whatever for reasons, right? Or right for reasons. Like I think deep down, I think what we all realize is that as we see it today, our system is, if not broken, breaking, and because we can see that very very clearly, we realize actually I would just go as far as say I think we do recognize who the good guys and the quote unquote the good guys and the bad guys really are. I think in the real world, what makes it really difficult is okay, we know the dragon's in the cave. How the fuck do we slay it? Whereas
I think the problem is in the real world, there's never a good guy. There are various shades of bad guys. And you have to choose what is the least bad one of them all. Because there's no, quote, good guy. I mean, I don't think they exist past fifth grade anymore. We all have shadows and stains and everything else. And most of us are not exactly uncorruptible or anything else.
Well, but you don't have to necessarily be uncorruptible. This is just maybe me talking to so many people on my show. I think by and large, 90% of people are decent people that just want to be left alone to do their thing. That's what people. That's most people, right? What you realize. So, your president. One of the wisest things I've ever heard from a president of the United States came from Abraham Lincoln. How do you test a man's character? You give them power and see what happens, right? Because again, power, wealth, all these things that people have, it doesn't change who they are. It just shows you who they are. Power reveals who people really are. Um,
Yeah, but if we have to wait to see who they are and until they're in power, most of the time by that point it's too late.
See, I maybe I'm a little bit more idealistic. I'll live with it. I This is the thing. I think what happens. This goes back to something I said earlier with the diodes and distractions.
Hmm.
We we get easily distracted. If we looked at people strictly from the point of view of accountability and actions, you can tell who the good guys and the bad guys really are. They don't hide. But most people don't look at it that way. What most people look at instead is what what they appear to be, right? They don't try to pierce the illusion until usually far, far too late.
So I happen to actually hate most sociological experiments because they are always set up in such a way to prove the point of whomever is trying to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I got almost in a shouting match with a sociology teacher in college. But one of the studies is, and I want to preface this with this study was done with men between the ages of 20 and 50 who were white and worked in a white collar job in the office. Okay. These were the only people in this participant. There were no blacks, there were no Asians, there were no females. Okay. They put them in a room and basically said, hey, every time you hit this button, the
Ah,
person
yes.
on the other side will get shocked. Almost without fail. All of them. It's like, oh, wait, I can hurt somebody without there being any consequences?
That was it.
Almost none of them said no.
It
Almost
was
none. Now, I would love to see the study redone if it was possible to actually get a non-contaminated blind study where you were doing it with women in different cultures. Because again, American, white, middle-aged males. This is a very narrow cultural thing because they have actually done studies that tends to be more of an American thing than it does other cultures. Other cultures, a lot of them would never do it. In some cultures, a woman would never touch that. In other cultures, men would. But I think the problem is that we never really know what somebody's going to do until they can do it without consequences. And we've seen that over and over again in religious leaders and political leaders, in coaches, in teachers. That's why I'm like going. I mean, don't get me wrong. I try very hard to be a good person. So I almost never talk about politics. I will tell you what my religion is, though. I
hmm.
am a Stoic,
Ah,
which means when it boils down to it, I believe that all of my actions are basically what I choose to do. And I have always loved Marcus Aurelius's look on faith and the afterlife. He said, if I live a good and just life and I die, and there are good and just gods, they will not care that I didn't believe in them. If I live a good and just life and I die, and there are cruel gods, I would not have wanted to follow them anyhow. If I could live a good and just life and there are no gods, then I have lived a life to be proud of. And that's kind of how I try pretty hard to live my life, but I'm still not perfect. I'd like
oh
to
no,
think I'm
God
one
no.
of the good guys, but eh,
So
I think that's what's nice about fantasy is the good guy's almost always the good guy. Now we're getting more. I think the writing of characters is becoming more nuanced because the characters are starting to have more flaws. Even the heroes are starting to have more flaws. They're less pristine in appearance. And the bad guys, really good bad guys, have reasons. They're not all black. They are trying to right what they perceive as a wrong. In science fiction, you can have a power hungry megalomaniac, or you're going to have people who think they're doing what's right. And it's not always the right thing. We have that today. You looked at the political races in this country lately?
oh, I'm an American citizen. I can vote. I can vote in your country. I can vote for both countries. And uh, I predicted the current election as it constructed 4 years ago, because you guys have a grandpa problem, and that's just the way it is. You have a grandpa problem. You need somebody new. Now, this is my opinion. I think both of the guys you currently have are the two worst presidents in history. Both of them. It's not even close. I never thought I would miss George W. Bush ever. I never thought. Never thought I would. But he was better than both of these two by a mile. Like it was not. It's like it's not even close, right? All right.
Mostly, you couldn't pay me enough to be president. You couldn't. There is. So you've heard the saying that behind every man is a woman. I think it's equally true that no great man is ever a good man, because I don't think you can be great and actually be good. And literally, I cannot think of a single example. Einstein was an asshole. Gandhi was a pedophile. Every great man is almost never good, because I don't think you can get to those levels of power and still be good.
What do you? How do you define good? Let's try this.
Somebody I would be willing to let watch my children and have dinner with.
Okay.
There isn't a single president lately that I would want to have in my house and trusted with my cat that keeps wandering behind.
There hasn't really been a great president in so long that I would agree with you. But no.
I don't even have high standards.
No, it's not about it's not. I think you have the same standards everybody else does in that regard. I personally would. I don't trust either guy, potential incumbent running for the next year, to tie their shoes. Right. I don't, because again, nothing.
I don't trust them to care enough about the people that they are supposed to be there for. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the job. I mean, it would be like going to a doctor who is literally there just to check the boxes to get you out of the office. And I know there are some doctors like that. But
yes.
At that point, you don't trust that doctor and you're not going to go. I don't get to choose as easily as to who my representatives are. I wish I did. I wish I could say, nope, you're fired. Then I might go somebody else. But it's a lot harder.
It's
so true. No, I would like to have a good person.
So so what is a good person in your eyes? And I'm asking this honestly, like not like specifics. What qualities are you looking for?
They stay honest. If they swear to uphold the Constitution, uphold their parliamentary rules, whatever, they do that. They
integrity.
Keep to their word.
So integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Transparency.
I would like them. I don't necessarily need transparency all the time, because I do understand there are some things that it causes harm if other people know about. I'm enough aware that the government can't always be that transparent. But if they can have integrity, they have loyalty to the people that they are there to protect, and they have ethics that do not violate. I really dislike bringing up Judeo-Christian, but for the most part, the Judeo-Christian 10 Commandments tend to be standard across almost all religions. I mean, pretty much everybody agrees: don't kill, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. If you can be somebody who can actually do this, and it isn't I can't do that because I'm not allowed to, but because you don't actually want to do these things. Now, the line, I saw a great story one time of what would happen if you couldn't lie at all, and all the white lies. Yeah, society crumbled in days. But that to me is a good person. He doesn't have to believe in what I believe. He doesn't have to like the things, or she doesn't have to like the things I like. But they need to be somebody who, when they look at me and say, absolutely, this is something that I will get done, I'm not going to wonder how much somebody else is going to bribe him to do it. I'm not going to wonder what the price is for them to decide. And this is probably one of my big things, and it's one of my pet peeves with most politicians. If you ask me a question, and let's pick something obvious. How do you change the oil in your car? Most politicians are going, well, that's a very good question. We would have to, I am sure that this is super important to blah, blah, blah. My reaction is going to be, I don't have the slightest idea. I can look it up for you, or I can go get the person who does. And most of them can't do that. So a good
So
person is somebody who can admit it.
so this is I'm going to go back to the word I use, transparency. You need transparency to be authentic. That's just
Yes.
the way it is. You have no
Yeah.
choice. You have no choice, because if I'm trustworthy, I'm going to have no problem by and large telling you things,
Right.
right? I'm going to have no problem with it.
Or you're going to look at me and say, this is something I cannot tell you right now.
Yeah,
And I am okay with that.
yeah, okay, but again, that's a level of transparency,
Yes, it
right?
is.
There's a certain level of that, right?
Mhm.
So here, like, if you're going to look at your like, this isn't just, by the way, the United States. I think this is
It's
worldwide. And
every
by the way, the study you're
worldwide.
referring to, it's 70%, 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10 what? Sorry, what?
But the button thing you're talking about, 7 out of 10.
Oh, was that what it was? I can't remember.
Yeah. So anyway,
It was
but that, it was in the 60s. It was a very, they wanted, what they wanted to see is if they could get people to do what the Nazis did in the 50s, 40s, and 50s.
It was amazingly easy, wasn't it?
Oh, but where I have a slightly more horrifying take on you is, I think actually you can get anybody to do it, provided certain conditions are met. But that's okay.
Oh, well, sure. Absolutely. I am one of these people who, anytime somebody looks at me and goes, oh, I could never kill somebody, I'm like, everybody can kill somebody. They just need the right motivation.
It's much more when you read, when you study the hows and whys of certain things, like, you get the psychology behind it. And once you understand the psychology behind it, you realize anybody could do it. But again, it's being self-aware. That's the other thing too. It's being very self-aware. And one of the general things I've learned with most people is most people aren't self-aware, or as self-aware as they should be. But anyway, that's another thing. Going back to what I said,
totally different conversation.
That's a different conversation. Transparency, but the thing is, like, if I were to break the political system, not just of the United States, but Canada, the world, we don't have an authentic. Again, we have a government that we know deep down lies to us. All of us believe it, right? What the lies are? We and you might disagree on what they are, but the bottom line is, we on as a consensus, I would say 9 out of 10 people would say that the government is completely full of shit. And the reason it is completely full of shit is there's no accountability. They're not authentic to us. They're not transparent to us, right? And anytime there's an attempt to be any of those things, they tend to and run as fast as they can away from you, right? So that's right now. I've interviewed politicians. Here's the thing I realized about a politician when I interview them. They have to buy into their bullshit a little bit. They have to, because if they don't, they're gonna have. There's no way they can conceivably convey whatever message you're gonna get across. You can tell human beings can sense when somebody is not buying their own. You can think they're full of shit, but if you listen to somebody, you can kind of tell that they really believe what they're saying, or they don't. It comes across, and once it comes across a certain way, if you hear somebody and you believe they don't believe a damn fucking word they're saying, they don't believe one word, you're gonna tune them.
Yeah, and then that's like, okay, so let's say my platform is, I believe in repealing daylight savings time, which I do 100%. Please, dear God, let me stay on one time clock. If I didn't believe it, why in the world would I be doing it? Now I understand why they do it, because somebody's paying them, because that's what their backers want, whatever. If I don't believe in that platform, if I honestly believe that daylight savings time was a good thing, which I don't, because God, losing that hour in the spring hurts, I wouldn't be stumping for it. I wouldn't be a proponent for it. And yes, I am purposely choosing things that are not particularly political. I'll argue with people about daylight savings time.
No, it's fine. No, I'm putting it like this. You have to buy it. And the thing is, they're human beings too. They do have to buy it. Now, they don't necessarily buy everything, but they do have to buy it enough to convey whatever message they're going to convey.
So why do they have to buy it? Either they believe in it and can support it, or they don't.
It's about what you want. No, like, honestly, this is what it comes down to, right? You know this. If you ever worked for a big company, there are policies in a company that,
That are
frankly,
stupid as all get
oh,
out.
exactly. But you do them anyway.
Oh,
Why?
with much protest.
So
No, I do them with much protest.
maybe you do much protest, but here's the thing. Sometimes people have this. This is the mentality. This is the nature of the beast. This is the nature of the beast. Why fight the beast? Now, again, that this is a personal thing, but why fight the beast? This is just the way it is. So I have a
Yeah.
choice, right? I have a choice. Do I buy in enough? Because if I'm going to do this right, I'm going to have to, on some level, find a way to believe in this somehow, some way, right? Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do my job right. This is what it comes down to, right? Right?
Usually for me, it comes down to I disagree. I have told you why I disagree. Yes, I will do it because the company says this is the policy, and that's fine. It's their company. They have the right to write the policies however they want. I still think it's wrong and stupid. And I have said that to my boss so many times that she just goes, "Yes, I know. I agree with you. We have to do it anyhow." Like, that's fine. But I have also refused, flat out refused to do things that were unethical.
Oh, sure. No, no.
I'm like, nope, don't care. Fire me.
And,
I'm not doing this.
but here's the question, right? This is what it comes down to. Some of them do walk away. Some do. Some never only go
Mhm.
so far up in government, and that's as far as they go because they cannot cross that line,
You can't cross that line.
right? But some do. And the reason they do, again, this isn't, I'm not judging anybody on this. This is just me
No.
understanding. This is just me understanding this. What do you want, right? If someone wants to be president, if someone wants to be somewhere in a position of the company, and it's true, it's true with anything, you're
Mhm.
gonna have to swallow some of this, right? Now, if you don't want to swallow it, that's fine. You'll either stay exactly where you are, or eventually you'll leave. One or the other.
And I understand that. I even agree with it, which is another reason why I will probably never manage to run for office because I have
Yeah,
hard times with this.
yeah.
But at the same time, that's also probably why we need people who can't swallow it in office.
Oh,
Because as long as we keep having people who keep going, okay, I will ignore all of this to get this, we stay right where we're at.
there.
How did the discussion on books become
No, no,
political?
no, because it just went here. We just started talking. All of the only thing I'm going to throw back at you, and then we can move on, is this. Some of this, not all of this. Some of this. You know this. You and I aren't going to agree on everything. Okay,
No,
right?
of course not.
There's just no way. But here's the deal. We can cut now. This is what how it used to be. It's not quite this way anymore, but it's how it
At
used
all.
to be, right? You and I would find some kind of common ground
Yes.
somewhere, and we'd live with it,
Yep.
right? That's called
Oh,
compromise,
compromise.
right. Some of what you're describing, some of what I'm mentioning, is that compromise part of it.
Mhm.
We all have to, at least on some level, we all have to figure out what we're going to live with, what we're not going to live with, right? That and for every person, that is a different answer to the question. I think, though, and this is something I'm saying, we don't have an authentic system. We don't have a transparent system. We don't have any of these things. There is a separation between leadership and the people it's supposed to govern. It's too separate. And what's going to happen is eventually that leadership is going to collapse in on itself. You can see it. It's coming. So that's what's happened. It's too disconnected to its own people. So that's where we're at. That's where we're going. Now, the way out of this, but in terms of somewhat of how we got there, you got, again, it's the human psychology of it, the nature of compromise, the nature of like working to make a deal, someone seizing an opportunity. Like I said, we don't have time to go all in depth in your history, but certain decisions that were made at the top that could have allowed for the separation, right? Those things were allowed to carry to for a very, very long time, and not just in your country, mine too,
Oh
right?
yeah. I mean, but that's pretty much how all modern governments work. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, I don't know much about how North Korea works, but as far as I'm aware, it's a dictatorship.
But, but,
So,
but, but by and large, no matter what kind of government it is, there are some things that are universal across the board. That's just the way it does. Dress it however you want to. Structures are structures. There's certain things that can't work. Tyrants only will last as long as they win. That's something that's the
That
truth. The
is
moment
very
that's right,
true.
that's all right. That's it. Tyrants only last as long as they win. That's how it works. But anyway, so we went from religion, I don't know how I got it out of you. That wasn't necessarily my master plan, but that's where we went. So
Right, I think we did a pretty good job because I don't believe that any of my readers are going to be particularly offended by my religion because, well, Stoicism isn't necessarily anti anything. It is more of a, it's up to you to decide how you deal with what the world throws at you.
it's pretty agnostic.
It is. It is. You can be a Christian, you can be a Buddhist, you can be Hindu and still be a Stoic because
Mm.
I just find it easier to deal with life if I, because good Lord knows my life has thrown me some curveballs. If I put it on myself that the only thing I can control is my own reactions to
Yeah,
things. So it's up
that's
to
just
me to decide how I want to react.
at the end of the day, you do exactly what you want to do.
Yep.
I learned this lesson personally 5 years ago. It's like, wait, people always do what they want. That's actually made me forgive people a lot more. But not less when I realized this, because I realized that oftentimes our mistakes are about a want that's something I can genuinely understand. And once I put it in that perspective, it's easier to forgive people. Sometimes people are still assholes. Don't get me wrong, but but it but usually you can look at how someone is doing and you can get a little understand a little bit more why they're doing it, right?
Yeah,
Whether you agree
and
with
I
it or
agree with that.
not, it's another story. But with that understanding, I don't hate them as much. Right, and then that's the thing, right? I understand. It's like I get why you're doing it, and I think you're a dumbass, but that's neither here nor there. Or I think, oh, okay, I get it. It's something I never considered before,
Mhm.
right? Bridging communication is a wonderful thing. So
It is.
yes, so we went. So I'm afraid to ask the other question because we talked why, because this all started with why does fantasy teams be doing better right now, and this is where we went. This is where we ended up. So let's go another way. I think, why do you think, I have another theory about why science fiction is kind of behind. Ironically enough, I think science fiction of all the genres is the most least cutting edge of all of them, right? And I think that's an irony because it's the fiction about the future, and I feel it's the one most stuck in the past.
I
Isn't
don't
that?
disagree.
Yeah, it's ironic, I think. So, what do you think? How do you think? Because I could legitimately see a day where science fiction is one part of a bookshelf and fantasy is everything else. Because it's almost become that way now, right? It's funny. I the stuff that made science fiction work, in my opinion, now other genres are doing it. Like for example, pulp novels. Do you know who does good pulp novels now? Japanese light novels. They are pulp. They're basically pulp novels dressed up a little bit with some cool pictures, but they are
Hmm.
essentially they Japanese light novels are the
I
new
don't think
pulp.
I've
They've been
seen any of those.
You probably have, but you've never bothered to look. They're in the manga section,
Right.
right? They're in the manga section. If you go in the manga section, you'll see actual novels there. If you look at the novels, they're short little things.
Yeah.
They're like 50,000 words or less, and they got some pictures in it. And I'm like, I've seen this before. This is the old pulp stuff. So if I want to read pulp, that's where the pulp is now, right? Pulp is
Hmm.
there. If I want to read really cool old school science fiction concepts, right? They're there, right? Or sometimes if I'm lucky, I'll see them in YA. YA will play with science fiction in some fun ways sometimes, right? Now, fantasy, it's adult. YA, adult, everyone's got fantasy. Everyone's got Brandon Sanderson, Fondleby, we'll just say Mel Todd. Because why not? We are here. You might as well just like, everybody wants that, right? So I'm going to say it like that because it's like fantasy has done a really good job of, you can still now, the giant tome brick fantasy novels, there's only a handful of those a year, because let's be honest, like I can only read like 3 of those, right? So a year, and then I have to go somewhere else. But there are some good ones there, but there's a lot of them that found a happy home in the 60 to 120,000 word range, and they're doing great, and
Oh yeah.
they do fantastic world building. Some of the stuff you're talking about, they do it. They do it better than everything else. And I think the other thing is, they understand what parts of the story they're world building actually matter in the story. They do that so well.
It's always the characters. I
Hmm.
mean, you can describe the most beautiful room in the world, but if you don't have somebody there seeing it, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's see. You've done 30 novels. So what got you into this? Okay, let's do an origin story. I know an hour in, we're doing an origin story.
Honestly, I can't remember a time I didn't read and write. I was digging through some stuff and I found a novel I'd written when I was like in my early 20s. I wrote short stories. I would take care of kids and I'd be like, okay, give me 3 objects. And they would give me 3 objects and I'd tell them a story about those 3 objects. So uh, I was well aware of the difficulty of getting a trad pub deal. And I went, I don't have the self-esteem or fortitude to deal with nonstop rejections, and I'm aware of that with myself. That would be wrist-slitting levels of depression, and so I never really thought about it. I wrote for myself. It was fun. It was what I did to entertain myself. And then in around 2002, a friend introduced me to fan fiction, and I went, "Oh, this is fun." And so I started writing fan fiction because fan fiction was a blast. And then about 2011, one of my fanfic friends contacted me. He's like, "Hey, I'm publishing my original stuff on Amazon. You should really take a look at this." And I went, "Okay." And then I looked at it. I'm like, "This is kind of cool. How well did you say you were doing?" He told me how well he was doing. And I went, "Okay, wow." Um, and so I started trying to figure out what I should write. But because I didn't think that I didn't have enough trust in myself to do it. So I got in with a group of writers who are wonderful, wonderful ladies who all wrote erotic romance, which I do not write
It's
at
all
all.
good.
They're wonderful. They're still my friends because they were awesome people. Our writing styles did not mesh at all. I learned one of my most important lessons I've ever learned is make sure the people giving you feedback are the audience for your book.
For the most part, yeah. For the most
Yeah.
part, yes. So it's always good to have like one outsider read your stuff because it's cool.
Yeah, but no, not when they're all outsiders and none of them read science fiction.
No, I
So,
I have a soft
yeah.
spot for the erotic fiction ladies. I mean, my first big like live show was actually at an erotic event. So I
Mhm.
actually they are cool ladies. They made me
Oh no,
blush.
they are.
They
They
made me
are
blush.
awesome.
They made me blush like a schoolboy. Like they had me redder than, oh my god. It was fun. It
Oh
was
yeah,
so much
no,
fun.
I mean, I met some great authors. We're still friends. I, however, do not write erotic fiction. That is not what I write. So I wrote 2 romance novels. I was working my way through a trilogy novella, just playing with something, and life decided to kick me in the teeth extremely hard. And so I took a year off. And when I came back, I went, why in the world am I writing romance when I barely read it? And I have a library with 3,000 sci fi and fantasy novels in it. Why aren't I writing that? And so I started writing that, and I basically haven't looked back since because I was writing what I wrote, what I love to read, what I kept, all of the things. Don't get me wrong, I read the occasional erotic romance and romance, but they tended to be candy. I eat it, I enjoy it, I forget it. I couldn't even tell you the name of very many of the erotic romance novels that I've read. I can tell you the names and plots of most of the sci-fi fantasy stuff I've read. I can wax rhapsodic if I go through, oh, well, then there was this one, then there was this. Oh, you got to read this. Yeah. So, and I started writing in the last couple of years. Uh, I've gotten a lot of fans who just like the types of stories I tell because I am definitely still not telling the traditional story that trad pub is looking for. I mean, I'm sure some of mine are, but a lot of mine are kind of slightly off kilter. And there seems to be a lot of people out there that enjoy that.
I'm doing an Alice in Wonderland Greek mythology mashup right now
Oh,
in
see,
epic
that would be
poetry form.
fun.
Yeah, in epic poetry form. So I definitely go off my own little. You're like, what the hell?
I'm just thinking, I love Gilgamesh. I've read it a couple times. I love Beowulf. I have zero desire to try to write an epic poem.
I wrote my
I
first one
do
by
need to read the Eddas, but I just no. Mm-mm.
I wrote my first one by accident. Like it was really it was just
Yeah, no.
it's like anything else. You just get it's like anything else. Like once you get in, it's a slippery slope. You know how that goes, right?
Yes, I
It's a
do.
slippery slope at that point. It's just how it goes. No, I mean, but that's the cool thing about publishing today is there is an audience for everybody. The trick
Yes.
is, can you go find it? Do you know how to find it, right?
I don't have a clue. Somehow they found me.
Which is
And I mean,
that's the best thing. That's the best
it
thing.
is. And my fans are probably my best advertising I have. Now, I will say I still write fan fiction. I still post semi regularly. I need to be posting more. Just this last year has been a little difficult. Um, because it's still fun. It's still something I greatly enjoy doing, and I like being able to write things that sometimes I don't have to worry about following any of the rules. I can just write and see what the characters do because they're characters I know so well. I don't have to worry about it.
See, I actually tell people if you piss me off, if you actually piss me off, I will not make you into my books. I'll make you fan fiction because that's the perfect punishment for you. It's the perfect punishment. It's like I'm not gonna give you the glory of being in my books. No, 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 no. You're gonna be my fan fiction that's hidden a long time ago. It's like, why am I in here? Because you pissed me off.
Nah, I still really enjoy the fanfic. I enjoy the community.
Mhm.
Um, eh,
There's some cool stuff out there, folks. And all right, whether it's Wattpad or whether it's whatever form you find, there's some good fan fiction out there.
and I've never gotten into Wattpad because that was a little bit after my time when I'd gotten my roots firmly in. Mostly I post on Twisting the Hellmouth, AO3, and fanfiction.net. And
Twisting the
that is
Hellmouth,
more than enough. Yeah.
Twisting the
It's
Hellmouth.
it is a Buffy the Vampire Slayer crossover fan fiction. So like 95% of all of the fan fiction in there is Buffy the Vampire Slayer crossovers.
Oh, okay.
So
So you're having fun. So you're a big Buffy fan, I take it.
I am. What's funny is my favorite character is Xander. I love Xander. He is the one that I have always just absolutely adored. And so he tends to be the main character in most of the stuff I write.
The most courageous character in the Buffy universe, arguably the most broken.
Yep.
Yep.
He was the only one that kept trying with no power.
Yep.
Even after they pushed him away, he never could walk away from the fight. And it's a theme I return to over and over again. There's often people who are like, "Well, why don't you get your eye replaced?" You know, stuff. He's like, "Because this is a scar and a memory of the people who didn't make it out. I wouldn't dishonor them by trying to make it look like it never happened."
Mm-hmm.
So I play with that a lot. I've done most of the crossovers. I do really weird crossovers. One of them I did where Xander ended up in the JLA universe, and then the one that's currently that I still write is him in the MCU, and I have lots of fun writing that. And if you have fallen asleep on me, I am hanging up because I have to go to bed soon. Joshua, you fell asleep. Or you're frozen horribly, one of the two.
I just froze. I just froze for like a minute. So I completely missed your answer to that question. So
That's okay. I was accusing you of having fallen asleep because you were just sitting there like this, and I'm like, Josh, you know.
I did fall asleep. At least my computer did. So that intimidated was clear to wake it up. No, I always listen, but every once in a while, technology being what it is like a buggy thing, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I've enjoyed this conversation, so I don't know if I'd fall asleep with it. So I'd be, that'd be rude.
Well, I mean, I'm also well aware of the fact that way too many of us burn the candles at both ends and then in the middle. So my immediate reaction would be, yeah, you put in way too many hours today.
Oh, I definitely gonna need to eat when we're done this one because I definitely need. But I'm trying to make this a living, and so I've gotten it. Like I said, I came within a month of like I had two contracts that would have been a full time living. Like
Nice. And you dropped. Well, people, since it is just me, and I do have to go to bed soon because I have to get up at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, and it's almost 9. I'm going to give Joshua a second to come back in. And then otherwise, I will probably introduce myself, tell you where you can find me, and then run away to bed because I am like that. And the fact that I do enjoy getting to sleep, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Let's see, you crashed. I'm talking to him now on Messenger. Yeah, don't you love technology? It is always so much fun. Let's see what he says. He's coming back. Yay! I feel like if the cat was wandering around at the moment, I'd introduce him. He and the other one are somewhere avoiding me because that would be too convenient for everybody. Don't you love just getting to sit here and talk to yourself? Let's see. I can tell you about my books. I have a Twisted Luck fantasy that is urban fantasy that is fascinating with all sorts of characters, including a talking cat who really feels that everybody would taste good if you had hot sauce. I had a series that I did where I wanted to see how you could do werewolves without magic. And I had a lot of fun with that series. It wasn't quite as popular as my Twisted Luck series, so I kind of wrapped it up, but it's still a neat idea and neat story. It has aliens, sci-fi. What else do I have? I have a bunch of short stories and a ton of anthologies at this point, including It Came from the Trailer Park 1 and 2. You can find those out now. The latest one actually has a short story in it by Jonathan Mayberry and is introed by Larry Correia, which is really kind of cool. And that story was just fun to write. Oh, what else? It's funny. After a while, you start forgetting all the books you've written, which is something I never ever thought would happen when I first started writing. Yeah, it does. If you sign up for my newsletter, I send it out every other week, so basically twice a month. And it always has a free micro short story in it that I write, which lots of people seem to like. And it also means I have lots and lots of stories I could tell down the road because they're always random. They can be just about anything. Other than that, I have my romance pen name that's out there hiding somewhere. I have, good grief, what else do I have? I have the Blood War series that we're still working on. I need to get my co-author up and writing. And then I have all of the new stuff I want to do. You see the picture behind me right there? I have a epic fantasy novel I'm going to write off of that picture. Let's see, I don't know. There, you can see all of it. I'm super excited about that one. It will be a glorious novel. And then I have other standalone novels in my Twisted Luck series I want to write, and I need to finish the series. I'm working on book 7 right now, and I'm also working on a book for a shared world called Delta Underground Operatives, which, assuming I make all of my deadlines, I swear, reality, it should be coming out this summer or next summer, however you want to look at it. As for me, I have cons coming up, I hope. There's a couple I won't even know I've been accepted for a couple more months. Uh, but we'll see. Most of them are local here. The big one's probably Dragon
Hi.
Con. Oh, look, he made it back.
I would have been back a little sooner, but for whatever reason, the StreamYard has a hard time reading my camera and my microphone. So, yeah, anyway,
I've been basically sitting here talking about myself because I didn't know what else to talk about.
that's the whole point. We were going to get to the plug and play. We get to, this was get
Well,
this is get
actually, we probably need to because I don't know what time it is for you, but for me, it's almost 9, and my wake up alarm tomorrow morning is 5 a.m.
okay.
So,
So what was I saying right before we disappear? So I'll wrap that point up. We'll wrap up the interview and we'll go on. What the heck was I going to say there? What was it saying?
oh, I was talking about fan fiction and tropes.
Yes, fan fiction and tropes. I'm talking about Xander, right? Being like the courageous Bergman. Actually, the observation. I'm going to ask probably the most serious question I'm going to ask, and then we're going to wrap this up. Okay? Do you see yourself as a good person?
I think I could be a better person,
Sure.
but I think overall, if I was brought to judgment by beings or whatever, I don't think I have that much that I can look back at my life and be ashamed of. I have a few things. I still do that I shouldn't do, yeah. But overall, I'd like to think if my soul was placed on the scale, the feather might go up or go down. Can't remember which one it's supposed to
It
be.
goes down.
Goes down?
It goes down.
Yeah, I want to be lighter than a feather.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Like I said, I would like to live a life that I will not be ashamed to stand up to.
Make a million mistakes and have no regrets, and that'll happen. That'll happen.
The mistakes don't bug me.
No, mistakes don't bug me either. It's the regrets. Miss Mel, it has been a pleasure. It's a little awkward at the end there.
Well, assuming you were still filming, I was just telling him about my different books.
Oh yeah, it was still rolling. It was still.
Okay.
I tried, like I said, my microphone. I got in about a minute or two prior to coming in again, but my mic and my camera did not work, so they wouldn't let me go in. So I got to listen to you go off. Like I said, you've done some cool stuff, and maybe down the road when I'm actually on the road with the show. Oh, that's what I was going to talk about. I was this close to being a freelancer, right? And that was the thing I was mentioning, and then we disappeared. So yeah, I lost 2 contracts, but I mean the living wage thing is definitely possible. And when you go and I was going to say is when you go full time. I give the biggest 2 things I've learned about freelancing. Believe in yourself. This sounds like I know it sounds like one of the lamest things, but there's a huge mindset difference when you go, I'm not going to fuck this up versus I'm going to do it, right? There's a very different mindset. The I'm going to do it mindset is going to get you a lot farther than I'm not going to fuck this up. It's a piece of advice.
No, I have up above my wall. I'm going to be moving my office into my library, but above my wall right now it says, "Darling, you're a goddess, a badass, and you totally got this."
Yeah, you'll do it. Just believe in you.
Yeah, I got this. I just need life to settle down just a little bit so I actually have time and energy to write.
Life never settles down. Then
trust me, at this point, it doesn't have a choice because I don't have anything else it can do to me at this point.
Don't say that exactly.
Oh, no, trust me.
Okay, fair enough.
So, as I was saying, if you want to sign up for my newsletter, go to badashpublishing.com. I'm mostly on Amazon, but I will be going wide with the series here this January with the Caleb Chronicles. And I should be at DragonCon. I will be at JordanCon and the rest of the cons. Oh, LibertyCon. I don't know about some of the others because they haven't finished opening up their applications. But DragonCon I'll be at regardless because I have a booth. So I will be there. So you can come and buy real hard paper books that get signed. Novel concept, I know.
You can get them defaced in her presence. It'll be a wonderful thing.
I will scribble all over them for you.
All of the scribbles. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Mel Todd. So for everybody interested, I do advertising services. No. Oh, there it goes. For anyone interested, I do advertising services for audio, video, for books, brands, projects. I do all that stuff. I do videos and audios all over the place for it. If you're interested, definitely check this out. And this is it for streaming this week, folks. I got I'm not doing any more streaming as I got a show I got to put together. But next week I do a drink and draw with an old friend, and then I have my 900th episode. So it's going to be a while. Yeah, you're episode 898. So
I see that. That's awesome.
So for everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
And come on, you. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
I can still hear you.
Yeah, I'm frozen. This thing is frozen. Me trying to end the broadcast here.
It just likes me too much. Wants me to stay on.
Well, it'll be done in just a second. But before we go, before I call it a day, send me a book cover. Send me all the links you want me to use.
Okay.
And beyond that, are there any questions?
Nope. I will try to remember to do it tomorrow evening.
Okay.
If I don't send it to you, please follow up with an email.
Okay. Well, Mel, it was nice to finally talk to you. I hope you had fun.
I did. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Have a good one. Do. Yes, there's restaurant number 1.